And this is our annual meeting is a time where we take a little bit of a step back and honor some of the groups that are fighting back at multiple levels, trying to restore and promote and lift up um, historically marginalized groups and the democratic principles that we all believe in. So, and that's what we'll be doing in the first part of tonight. Once we get started, we'll follow that up with having some discussion in small groups about what should be our next steps in trying to fend off the state government with Governor Healy and her minions from putting in a new form of standardized tests into our public education system. And hopefully we'll come out with some inspired ideas of what's next. And then we finally will finish up with some business nominees, new board nominees vote, as well as a treasurer's report and a little bit of recruiting folks for the coming year. So with that, um, I'm gonna turn it over to why don't I turn it over to you, Lisa, to introduce the honors process, and then you can turn it over to Sheila.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you all here tonight. So this is the portion of the annual meeting where we recognize three really important champions of public education. So we're going to have someone introduce each champion in turn, and then they'll speak for a few minutes. We'll have a little time for Q&As, and then we'll go on to the next. So it's now my pleasure to give you Sheila Dechter, who will be introducing our first honoree.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, we're delighted and excited to honor Lawyers for Civil Rights tonight for all their work related to education and access to education, which of course includes their work to protect the rights of immigrants. Lawyers for Civil Rights works with people of color, immigrants, and low-income communities to fight discrimination, foster equity, and pursue justice through creative and courageous legal advocacy, education, and economic empowerment. LCR has provided consistent long-term work on reforming school discipline policies, for example, challenging the excessive use of suspensions, expulsions, and school-based arrests, practices that disproportionately harm students of color and students with disabilities. We also honor LCR for its leadership and participation in the vocational education justice coalition, working to change exclusionary admission policies and open access to vocational technical education schools. No surprise that LCR would have a current focus on defending student immigrants and families from unlawful and unprecedented aggressive immigration enforcement by ICE by insisting that the rule of law be upheld. Give me 1 second. With the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, LCR's work is even more important at a time when there's no federal oversight. Currently pursuing several discrimination cases where school systems have not sufficiently responded to physical violence and the bullying of students of color. They have also worked to get the Mass Interscholastic Athletic Association to get enhanced transparency around incidents of discrimination, harassment, and bullying at school sporting events. LCR also advocates for fair, full-funded schools so that every child has the resources they need to thrive in every community. And equal access to public schools includes students who are new immigrants in the community or housing insecure. I'm especially delighted that its chief exec, Ivan Espinoza Madrigal, is with us to accept the award. I've had the pleasure and honor to work with Ivan in my work with the American Jewish Congress, and from his first day at LCR. From the first day, it was clear that Ivan was going to take this committee, formerly a 1960s project of the Boston Bar, to new heights. I'm going to give you just one quote. Ivan writes in LCR's most recent annual report, "We refuse to stand by in the face of injustice." And that really sums it all up. So, Ivan, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for accepting this award.
Well, thank you, Shayla. Thank you, Lisa. And what a distinguished team assembled here to support Citizens for Public Schools, and so many friends and allies in the audience. I see Barbara Fields among others. And it's just such a pleasure to be gathered here in community with you today. Uh, the work that you do is central to justice and to make sure that students have access to quality education, regardless of their background, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their identity. And I know that that work has been central to CPS since its founding decades ago. CPS supported, for example, the establishment of MEDCO to help integrate some of the communities around Boston and to help reduce racial isolation, goals that remain as critical today as it was when MEDCO was founded and when CPS was founded. There's an intersectional and very holistic way that you all do your work, set your priorities, and fight for justice, whether it's diverting tax dollars specifically to public schools that need the resources so that they can support students, or help avoid the diversion of tax dollars away from public schools. This is so critical, and you have a very robust understanding of how the demographic data and demographic profile of the students and the schools where they go is important to think through, with nuances surrounding race, with nuances surrounding immigration status, with nuances surrounding how injustice unfolds today, especially as we come from the pandemic, where we saw the haves and the have-nots, the harm to students who relied on schools for their meals, for breakfast, for lunch, the harm to students who didn't have access to internet at home because they can't afford it or because they don't have the devices to be able to do that type of connectivity. All of these injustices are at the heart of the work that you do. And you also bring to bear an understanding of how housing segregation has impacted students, because far too often lines were drawn arbitrarily, and they were drawn arbitrarily to exclude. And that is why right now at Lawyers for Civil Rights, we are planning a major case to be able to revisit much of how lines are drawn so that we can have justice for all of our kids and all of our students. And I hope that at upcoming Citizens for Public Schools gatherings, we're able to share more about the progress that we will do in partnership with each of you, with your leadership, with the expertise that is represented in this Zoom, particularly at a vital time with the dismantlement of the Department of Education and with so much work ahead. These things aren't just going to magically appear. It's going to take all of us working together in community to get it done. And I know that together, Lawyers for Civil Rights and CPS will get the job done. It is an honor to be here with you today. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for this recognition for Lawyers for Civil Rights.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for like weaving everything together, all the important issues that you're working on, that we've worked on, and as you said, the intersectionality. And very interested to see about this focus that you mentioned going forward. So congratulations. And as I said, now if anyone has a question for Yvonne, this is your opportunity. You can raise your virtual hand or your actual hand, or just speak up if you do have a question.
Don't be shy. I don't bite. I just sue.
I don't know. I can't find a virtual hand, Lisa, but thank
Oh,
you. This is
oh,
all about residential segregation, and that's a manifestation of the capitalist system. And it's going to stay that way unless courts intervene in some notable fashion, which is unlikely to happen in the present situation. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just saying it's an inevitability. And residential segregation creates the schools that we have. It's a critical element to that whole thing, and it's a conundrum to try to figure out how to dismantle that. So I'm
So,
just throwing out the negatives here, just so that we know what the challenge is, which you've already acknowledged as being substantial.
Yvonne, maybe you could give us a brief preview of the campaign. It sounds like you folks are just launching or preparing to launch.
Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Dan. A couple of comments to that. One is we've all seen how the courts have been responding to the current climate, and it's a mixed scene. There are some victories that have been hard fought for, and there are challenges ahead. This is not going to be a walk through the park, especially with the Supreme Court oftentimes being eager to hear some of these cases. And the composition of the court being what it is, often these decisions, even if it's just a preliminary decision favorable to the government, can still do significant harm and damage if it's unfavorable for public schools, for public school students, for low-income families, and so forth. And so certainly we have to be sensitive to what the legal and political environment is, but that doesn't mean that the work stops. That means that we have to find more creative ways of doing the work and more ways that are innovative. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again and not reading the room and not seeing that the writing on the wall is that certain claims or at least certain angles, certain framing is not going to be effective, then we need to change things up. And we also need to be thinking about things from multiple perspectives. Instead of going to federal court, could we be developing more jurisprudence in the state courts? Instead of going to court, could we be doing more advocacy at the state house? Or could we be doing more advocacy at the local level? Because as I like to say these days, local and state inaction is just as bad as federal action. And so we have to be thinking about where we take our asks, where we do the advocacy. Is it in federal court or state court? Is it in court altogether or in other spaces? And there's a lot of work that needs to be done right now, especially in narrative building and storytelling, so that we can change hearts and minds and have people understand why the priorities that we're putting on the table are important. And so that leads me to Dan's question, which we will have a lot more to showcase in the new year in 2026. But it's important for me to convey that education issues are near and dear to our heart. we are not going to throw in the towel. We're going to continue to push to be able to be more aggressive about these issues of where kids get educated and why some kids cannot go to school in places that they would like to go to school. For example, we started much of that work with the Vocational School Coalition. And with the coalition, we were pushing for admissions that were much more student friendly so that students can see themselves in vocational schools. They wanted to go to those schools. Maybe that's the school of their dreams. Maybe that's the school that was nearby. Maybe it's because for them, going into the trades is going to be their path to success, and they don't necessarily want to go the more liberal arts school college route. Um, and we as a state need that. We need students engaged in these educational programs. And so we need more kids doing this type of stuff, not less. And so how are we making sure that the gatekeeping, because that's what it is, it's how is the gatekeeping happening to let these kids in or to keep them out? And it's also the same if we look at other schools that are not just the vocational schools. How are we thinking about access to public schools more holistically so that we create more porous district lines so that kids can go to school in nearby school districts, so that if a student identifies educational opportunities nearby, what are we doing so that these district lines are not so rigid, like I was saying before, arbitrary and often designed to exclude? Well, can we make them more porous? Can we make these district lines something that's much more dynamic and that works with students and student interest instead of excluding students right out of the gate? And so we're interested in thinking through models that will make district lines more porous.
Great. Thank you
I would
so
just want to
much.
add one thing too, is put student interests as your number one priority. That should drive what goes on in schools. And when you do that, I've done extensive research on this. I won't bore you with that, but the point is that that's what made a difference with people. When you brought real people, students, and their realities into the decision-making process, it enriched what happened in schools.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Yvonne, so much. Really excited to see what develops and how we can work together. And again, congratulations. And now I'm going to turn it over to our next introducer, and that is Suleika Soto will introduce our next honorees.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Yvonne, and thank you to Lawyers for Civil Rights for all the work that you all are doing. So good evening, everyone. My name is Suleika Soto, and I am honored to introduce tonight our second champion of public education. This recognition goes out to mass advocates for children and the Protect Education Equity Coalition. I'm so happy to see so many people from MAC here. And this coalition's leadership has resulted in some of the strongest protections Massachusetts has ever put in place for English learners, students with disabilities, and their families. At a time when we are seeing so much uncertainty at the federal level, as Yvonne was talking about, these are uncertainty about civil rights, about multilingual education, and about the rights of students with disabilities. MAC and the Protect Education Equity Coalition have shown what it looks like to lead with clarity, courage, and a deep commitment to equity here in Massachusetts. So, through persistent organizing, partnership, and advocacy, MAC and the Protect Education Equity Coalition helped pass legislation that requires school interpreters to be trained and qualified, giving families real access to information in their home language. It strengthens civil rights protections for students. It affirms rigorous standards and supports for English learners. It ensures English learners with disabilities receive appropriate services. And last but not least, protects students with disabilities from unfair exclusion and harmful disciplinary practices. So these are not just symbolic wins. These are structural changes that will improve the educational experience of thousands of vulnerable students across our Commonwealth, especially the multilingual learners and students with disabilities. So to accept this recognition on behalf of the coalition, it is my pleasure to introduce Emily Romero from Massachusetts Advocates for Children. Please join me in welcoming Emily.
Thanks, Zuleika, and thank you to Citizens for Public Schools for the recognition of the leadership of the Protect Education Equity Coalition and Massachusetts Advocates for Children. My name is Emily, and I am the Community Partnerships and Engagement Manager at Mass Advocates for Children. And I'm so honored to accept this award on behalf of the Protect Education Equity Coalition. And a special thanks to our partners of the coalition here present, the MTA, AFT, Citizens for Juvenile Justice, LCR as well, MEJA, who are all vital members of our coalition. And it's moments like this, being surrounded by such dedicated partners and listening to all of the words of wisdom that everyone has to share, that I'm excited to talk about the powerful and inspiring work of the coalition to strengthen civil rights and education rights for students in the state. And no other event is better to show this than the legislative hearing that took place in May of this year, where we brought together a group of powerful and diverse partners with only a couple weeks' notice. As you all know from hearings, I'm sure that you all have worked on in the past. And it just went to show the urgency around this moment, where we are all collectively reeling from the horrific attacks on immigrant students, on students with disabilities, and on education across the country. But also the determination that we all felt to take action and to use this urgent moment to address issues that we've long known have existed, and also now longstanding rights that we've relied on that are now under threat. And one of the most powerful moments of that hearing was hearing directly from parents and students who would personally be impacted by changes to federal education laws. I was also incredibly proud to share my own story growing up as an undocumented student and directly benefiting from Plyler v. Doe, where parents of undocumented students fought for the right to education for their children. And that's, a court case that continues to weather challenges across the country. Just this past year, around 7 challenges where I've been tracking 7 challenges to Plyler v. Doe. And now in the coalition, through this work, sent a message that immigrant students are here to stay and have a right to receive a quality education and have a right to be supported in schools. So being a part of this work has been incredibly profound and meaningful for me. And working together in this incredible coalition, we can at least ensure that immigrant families' right to access to education is protected, alongside critical rights for English learners and students with disabilities, one of which has already been repealed by the new administration 3 weeks after we passed the law in Massachusetts, which was the Dear Colleagues letter of 2015 that outlined protections for English learners. And there's still a lot of work to do, as we all know. And we're so excited to continue to use the coalition to leverage our partners that we made and use this law as a launching pad for further advocacy and continue to engage our partners of our coalition of over 50 partners. And this includes continuing work to implement the law and also responding to emerging challenges to education, while also, keeping a lot of focus on longstanding issues that we've that are only becoming more exacerbated at this time. So thank you all so, so much. And I'm very excited and honored to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Emily. Congratulations on this recognition, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and some of the work. Again, we have an opportunity now. If someone has a question for Emily, please raise your hand, real or virtual, or just shout it out. Does anyone have a question? If not, I'll just ask as official coalition. Oh, Suleika has a question.
I do. Somewhat for my self-interest, but also because I I'm very judgmental of interpreters, and I'm trying to become an interpreter myself. So I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about the law around training of interpreters. Like, was it that they were just hire anyone, or was it because, like, it would, like, they would take the teacher from, you know or the janitor that knows Spanish to be the interpreter, or somebody else? Like, what? Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that part of the legislation?
Yeah, definitely. And my colleague Deanna is also on, so in case she can, supplement my answer. But yeah, so there is the right to qualified interpreters that has existed. And though what this law adds is basically it requires the Department of Education or the State Department of Education to create regulations that would essentially like ensure that schools can maintain or can keep and train qualified interpreters. So basically, like creating more specific guidelines to how schools can do that. The law does, though, state that parents should be receiving qualified interpretation. We know from our work, from cases that we take on, that that's not necessarily happening. That maybe it is an interpreter that doesn't do such a great job, or maybe it's a teacher interpreting, which is not it's not in line with the law. So this this law is a step in the right direction to be able to establish those regulations, to be better able to hold the school and district accountable to what the Department of Education states.
Okay, and I'm guessing then the coalition will then hold the education department accountable, right, for making sure they do the
Yeah.
regulations.
Yes, it definitely takes all of us to be able to implement and enforce a law. And we have our helpline that is available for families to call if, their rights are being violated in school, alongside, our numerous partners that also do similar work, where we hope to continue to track and, help parents know their rights. We also conduct trainings with parents. Oftentimes, though, we hear from parents, they know their rights, it's just the school keeps wearing them down, and to a point where parents are just so exhausted, and so we're continuing to work on this. And if anyone has amazing ideas, or has has lacked the capacity to do something that could be really impactful, the work of the coalition will aim to continue that and explore creative ways to implement this law.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Suleika, for your question. And now I will get us going on our next honorees, who I'm going to introduce. So bear with me while I spotlight the appropriate people. And Doug. Okay, great. All right, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce our third group of champions of public education, the Cambridge Retired Educators United, or CREW, and the MTA Retirees Against High Stakes Testing, represented here tonight by Kathy Greeley and Doug Selwyn, two leaders of this wonderful group of retired educators. These groups were instrumental in helping CPS plan, launch, and carry out our series of people's forums on graduation readiness, starting with the well-attended forum in Cambridge on April 30th. Kathy led a series of meetings to plan this first forum, which drew more than 100 educators, parents, students, and other members of the communities of Cambridge and Somerville. And this really got the whole series off to an incredible start and served as the model for all of our subsequent forums in New Bedford, Worcester, Greater Boston, Lowell, Western Mass by Zoom, and Salisbury. Doug and Rick Last led the organizing of the Zoom version of the forum aimed at Western Mass and rural communities, which drew about 40 people. And the People's Forums would not have been nearly as successful as they were without the support, enthusiasm, and dedication of the retired educators in these groups. I just have to say, if you want something done, find some retired educators because they're going to do it. So for all of their ideas and work and their ongoing engagement with this project, we are deeply grateful, and I'm happy to turn it over to Kathy and Doug to say a few words in whatever order you prefer.
Go ahead, Doug.
That's Kathy. Oops. That's Kathy organizing. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the MTA retirees. There are a lot of them all over the state, but this was a small and mighty bunch who has been meeting for years. Part of it is because we have lived through all of this. I think back to the mid-70s very briefly when the attack on child-centered education really hit a high level. And there was a guy named Samuel Huntington, who was part of the Trilateral Commission, who complained about what the schools were doing because it brought on an excess of democracy. And we certainly don't want that. So the MTA retirees, I want to talk a little bit about being a retiree. We remember what it was like before testing, and we have the stories and scars to prove it. We're trusted in the community. We raised many of the people there. We are not in the crosshairs currently, so we have more room to be honest and critical and out there. What are they going to do? Fire us? We're stubborn and passionate. We figured out for years how to work around stupid bureaucracy to actually get things done.
Right.
And we care desperately about the children, about public education, and are sick to death of compromises that sink the level of education even lower. And then we have Kathy, who is consistent and strong in her leadership and is even more stubborn and passionate than many of us. The work we have done with CPS has been really incredible in terms of not only organizing forums, but I was looking at all the T-shirts I have from all the campaigns. I mean, this has been an ongoing group of action-oriented people who have unleashed the power of our paid staff. That's Lisa. And work together with the MTA retirees and people around the state to get incredible amounts done with very few resources to do it. CPS has done so much with so few resources, but it is a heavy lift. When CPS unleashes its entire paid staff, Lisa, she can only do so much, and she does that and a lot more. But it really takes all of us if we're going to take on the state. And that continues to be what is in front of us. When the state thinks about education, what they have in mind is power, control, money, and more power. When we think about education, we think of our children and how our task, our responsibility as a society is to educate our young so they can lead healthy, joyful, and meaningful lives within a healthy, joyful, and meaningful community. That's what we're working for, and I hope we can keep doing this together. It's an extraordinary group that knows how to work together, to listen to and with each other, and to make things happen, which is no surprise because we're teachers. Thank you for the recognition, and we're going to keep doing this. And Kathy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you to Citizens for Public Schools. I feel like we should be giving you guys an award for the work that you have done in coalition with our retirees. It's our work with the People's Forums has been so incredibly validating. So if people are not familiar with the People's Forums, we've organized events to talk to people about what they think students should know and be able to do, and what are good ways to assess that, and how should we support that in schools. And it has been such a validating and positive experience to be going out and talking to people around the state around these questions. And what we have found is that there is huge consensus. Like, even there's a huge consensus that people are done with standardized testing, and they are done with bubble tests and all of that, and they want something really deeply meaningful for their children. And um, and even if you didn't have children, people really want to see the schools connecting students with our democratic communities. So I just wanted to really, it's been hard work, and I'm just going to say that our work is far from done because we have been fighting. We live in a very blue state, right? But there are people who do not, our state is also really dominated by corporate reform interests. And what CPS and our MTA retirees and our Cambridge retirees are trying to do is to bring a much more grassroots voice into the public dialogue and into the public, into a public forum. So we're hoping you'll join us because there are some fights coming down the road in terms of what the state is going to do around graduation requirements. We think we have the people on our side, but we need you all to help us to activate that. So I was very struck by Yvonne when he talked about being in community. And I think in these times when there's so many assaults on our democratic principles that we have to remember to stay in community. And I just really wanted to thank him for that and to think about organizing at the state level, the local level, telling our stories, being out there. And I'm just going to close with a quote that a friend just sent me from James Baldwin that says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And I hope we can hold that in our hearts as we work forward for our public schools and for justice for all our children. And thank you so much to CPS for this honor.
Thank you, Kathy and Doug. And I just want to, a lot of the members of those groups are with us right now. So can everybody who was involved in is involved in the groups that we're honoring, raise your hand or indicate yourself so that we can thank you as well. It's really an incredibly powerful, wonderful group and inspiring to know that, we don't ever have to stop this important work together. And so thank you all. And as with the other honorees, if someone has a question, speak now or forever hold your peace.
So I have a question. I mean, you guys have made clear the potential of retired educators in, these battles. Just an incredible amount of work was done by you. So we don't have time for like the whole recipe, but is there a key ingredient that made it possible for there to be for some groups of retirees to get so active when in many other towns, they're basically very passive?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Doug, you can jump in if you want, but I know our crew, our Cambridge Retired Educators United came together because we all lived in Cambridge. Most of us worked in Cambridge. Many of us, our children went to school in Cambridge. Some of our grandchildren are going to school in Cambridge. And I think people are just very passionate about the issues around public education right now. And we understand that we have a story to tell that's really important. But I'm just going to say, I think part of it is that we come together in person. We sit around my kitchen table. Alan, you've been there. Hello, Pat and Senator Jalen, and you've been there. And I think it's going back to that idea of community that we care about each other. Like we really like each other. We don't always agree with each other. We have arguments. We debate things. We go back and forth. But I think there is a sense of community connection that is really powerful. And I think we need to build more of that. When I think about how I became an activist back when I first, in my early 20s, it was because of communities around me that we did things together. We had potlucks together. We played soccer together. We went to protests together. And I think we have to build that sense of community beyond just agendas, but also about really caring about each other. I don't know. Doug, do you want to add?
Well, I would quickly just add one thing, caring about students. Caring about students will drive people forward. It will generate a sense of relational trust that might otherwise not be there and can push it forward. I've done quite a bit of research on this and the degree to which teachers in schools really embrace a commitment to changing what goes on and stopping the failure of undeserving students is if they're committed to the well-being of their students and making that their number one priority. And then it's also wonderful to have meals around a table if you can do that too. But day in and day out, students have to be what matters and what is going on in your school.
Thank you. Pat, Doug, did you
Yeah,
want to add anything?
I think what I would add is especially for those of us who have been at this a long time, we have seen the loss. I mean, a lot of us came into teaching when it was much more child-centered, when children's experience and who they were was much more honored and central. And over the many, many years, I can't tell you how many Zooms I've been on with people who we started this 25, 30 years ago and are in the can't believe we're still doing this or having to be out here, watching the loss um, of a centering of the children and watching them being sort of sacrificed to the autocratic dimensions we're dealing with now is painful. And most of my sense of teaching is that we never stop teaching or being teachers. We stop being paid for it. But we're still passionate about the work and about who the kids are. And it hurts to see what's happening. And we now have the time and energy and, in a sense, the freedom, since we can't be disciplined, to do the work. So that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Doug. I thought I saw another hand raised earlier from Laura Perez. Did you have a question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to take a moment before the next part of the agenda to recognize that we have Senator Pat Jalen here. And some of you may know that came out in the news that she's not going to run for reelection after 30 years of incredible public service. And I just want to acknowledge how much we appreciate everything Pat has done for education and other important issues over the years, and so give you your flowers. Thank you, Pat. Okay, so I think I'm next again. Let me just check.
You are.
Okay, thank you. So I'll spotlight myself. Even though I hate being in the spotlight. And okay, so I'm going to keep this short because, as usual, we have had so many great things to share with each other, and I want to keep people over. But I'll just give some highlights, and a lot of the highlights have to do with the people's forums that we've already been talking about. So, but I just want to say what an honor and privilege it is to serve as Executive Director of Citizens for Public Schools and work with all of you, some of whom I've been working with for decades, some more recently. And every year I talk about how important this work is, and every year it seems to grow even more important to stand up for our public schools. This year, the brutality and terror visited on our immigrant communities is top of mind. And we are called Citizens for Public Schools. And in the past, we've considered changing our name to be more inclusive of those who are not technically citizens. And we have a working group called Eliminating Barriers. And our last meeting, our new board member, Jilly Santos, who for whom there will be a formal vote at this meeting, Jilly raised the issue of our name, and we discussed it and liked the approach taken by Citizens for Juvenile Justice. So following in their footsteps, we talked about rather than change our name, we can announce or post a notice explicitly saying what we mean when we say Citizens for Public Schools. And I drafted sort of a placeholder that goes, we use the word citizens in our name to mean all residents and members of our communities who are entitled to participate in and benefit from our public schools, not just naturalized or legal citizens of the Commonwealth and the nation. So that's, as I said, a placeholder, and we can, I'm interested in editorial comments and suggestions. But again, we've really devoted a lot of energy and time and focus this year to the People's Forums on Graduation Readiness, and we're going to talk about what comes next in a minute. But as you've heard, in the wake of the successful campaign to pass Question 2 and end the MCAS graduation requirement, CPS didn't want to sit back and see what the Governor Healy's State Graduation Council would decide regarding graduation requirements. So we decided to try and build our own people's movement to try and influence what comes next. So working with our union allies and the retirees you just heard from and local organizations around the state, we put on a series of 9 forums on graduation readiness in 8 locations: Cambridge, New Bedford, Worcester, Lowell, East Boston, the South End, Dorchester, Salisbury, and Springfield, with 1 Zoom forum aimed at Western Mass and rural residents. And these all drew hundreds of participants. So we've compiled and analyzed all the responses of all the participants and produced a summary of our findings to be shared with everyone who came to a forum, as well as the powers that be, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Martinez, the members of the Governor's Council, the Board of Education, and the legislature's Joint Committee on Education. With support from the Mass Teachers Association, we held a briefing at the State House inviting legislators, the press, and others. We had a panel of speakers, including Harvard education professor and author Jal Mehta, Revere teacher Eric Fearing, Boston parent and CPS board member Suleika Soto, MTA President Max Page, and Vice President Deb McCarthy, and AFT Massachusetts Treasurer Brant Duncan. We produced a statement in response to the Governor's Council proposed framework for high school graduation. And our statement notes that despite many calls from many participants for multiple pathways to graduation, the Governor's Council's proposed framework lays out a multi-layered set of graduation requirements with standardized end-of-course assessments, a state-defined capstone or portfolio requirement, and requirements for students to complete a rigorous course of study that aligns with higher education admissions requirements. And we said in our statement that piling multiple layers of new requirements on our students will create new obstacles rather than providing opportunities for them to increase their life skills and pursue their individual goals. So next on the agenda for this meeting is an opportunity for all of us, all of you and us, to share thoughts on what should happen next in the wake of the Governor's Council's framework release and before June, which is when the final recommendations from the Governor's Council are due. So in the coming weeks, we're going to work with our allies and members and the retirees and others to develop our strategy going forward to make sure the Governor's Council's so-called listening sessions result in something more substantial than mere lip service to what people said they want students to know and be able to do and how to measure that. And in the interest of time, I'm going to stop there and promise to share a more detailed report on the rest of our activities and goals for the coming year by email. I think now we can move on to the next portion of the meeting, which will be led by Dan, a discussion of next steps. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan. I can find
Okay, and in a minute, we're going to put you all into small groups to go to work. But I'll cue us up with what, in terms of what Lisa said. Really, the highlights of the governor's 7 recommendations were the end of course standardized state created state scored um, tests along with the rigorous course of studies, which will most likely be the Mass Core curriculum. Everything else was sort of second class put in. The performance assessments was sort of a throw-in, we think, with which will just end up on a dusty shelf right next to the governor's new vision of the graduate, which articulate the skills that kids should have, but was not mentioned once in the recommendations for next generation requirements. It's important to note that the findings that the governor's listening sessions came up with found um, mirrored what the People's Forums came up with, which was the skills that kids need in this new world of problem solving, uh, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, etc. Um, Not mentioned once, but within the governor's recommendations. So, and the governor's recommendations didn't come from the governor's council. They really came from Secretary Tutwiler and Commissioner Martinez, along with Governor Healy. So our question is to everybody. The CPS and friends, the unions involved, the retirees held these forums, came up with the findings. We've disseminated them, and there's now, what, 5 months or so between which we need to put pressure on the state to really revamp and start anew around what new graduation requirements should be. So the question as we go into small groups is, what should those next steps be to keep the press on with the state in order to change their tune? So with that, I think Lisa is going to put us into small groups. And Lisa, given the time, what do you think? About 10 minutes?
Yes, given the time.
Okay.
So
So Lisa will put us into small groups. We'll have 10 minutes to discuss that question. Lisa will then bring us back and we'll have a quick couple minutes debrief.
Shravan is asking to post the question for the groups.
Okay.
And then I'll divide you all up. So are you putting it in the chat, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, given the state's recommendations for next generation graduation requirements and end of course standardized tests being the highlight, what should our next actions be to move the state toward a more humanistic set of graduation requirements? Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me here today.
Thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to have to go, but I just wanted to say bye before I logged out. Such a wonderful event, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you because in January, as we launch some of this work, we would love to be in partnership with you. And so I'll be in touch. And thank you so much for the recognition today.
Oh, absolutely. Congratulations. Thank you for being here. And yeah, let's be in touch soon.
Thank you. Okay. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for the recognition of the work. And yeah, and for all this, really important critical work that you all are doing. I would love to connect more to see how we can support and learn more about. I'm sure you have worked with Meg previously, but would love to, yeah, touch base on that. I do have to go now, but I do have your email, I think. Yes, I
Well,
definitely have your
I
email.
hope so. I wasn't really sure because there was some issue with emails, the original email that I sent to, is it
Mm,
Deanna or
I definitely
Diana?
have Suleika. I definitely have Suleika's email. Can you,
Um,
I don't know if you could send it to me just so I could
yeah,
take a note.
yeah, I was worried, especially today, I was worried that the communication was not going through. So,
Oh, all good.
yeah, I have your phone number now too, and you
Okay.
have mine because Suleika,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes, you did connect us. Okay, great. Yeah, I would love to schedule a time to meet and discuss specifically, I guess, maybe how this impacts the immigrant community and yeah, just to maybe bring it to the coalition and maybe like send an email out depending on how we can, yeah, work together. Thank you
great.
so much.
Okay, thank
Have a
you,
really good
Emily.
night.
You too. Good night.
Like wherever the money is going there. At least I'm glad you just joined. I was saying that I think that Drew was saying that we need to raise awareness. Like the parents, there's a big listserv in Cambridge. Like how do we make people aware that they're trying to come up with seven, right, recommendations now versus right, like it was just the MCAS before, now they're want to add more. Um so I was saying that I know we probably don't have the funds right now, or there would probably have to be like some money raised for it. But if AFT and MTA have some money to put some Facebook ads, some TV ads, right? Like just like political, just like they would like try to put something out there to make it the public aware, like they're going against what you guys voted for.
Mhm.
Right? Like just like we were there was a big campaign, right, for the vote no on two, a vote yes on two. I mean, same way, like, right, we need to raise the fight back in the same in that big manner.
'Cause, yeah, Lisa, I was saying it's very complex to understand because now there's multiple layers of benchmarks. I'm still unclear, right? The full net, the scope of it, how they're going to implement it, how they're going to enforce it. And it's harder for our side as the resistance too, because with one test, you can organize an opt-out and a boycott. But then, right, do we boycott like chemistry class, science, and math? And it's how do
Mhm.
you, it seems it's going to be complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I see Soleil put in the chat um, a question of whether districts are allowed slash obligated to send the changes to parents via email flyers that get sent home with kids. And I don't know the answer to that question. Um, it
Um,
seems like
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
yes.
Oh wow, that's actually insane. Okay. Okay. So no, yeah, for context, I'm like public education right now. But I was going to say these if they're all
Oops.
You're
Kind of
cutting out.
fading out. Yeah. I tend to think that the way things like this are communicated are via, uh, to superintendents and from them to like principals and from them to teachers. I don't know for sure. I don't think there's like any obligation for the state to communicate directly with parents about changes like this. Um,
um, So okay, so Michaela's in a senior now, my oldest daughter, and I got from her school, they sent me something saying, whether she's on the path to graduate or not, like whether she's met all the courses that she needed so far, and that kind of stuff. The district did send me that. And for me, hearing about the district speaking about like graduation requirements and things is mostly, at least in Boston, it's mostly like at school committee, right? And most parents are not watching school committee meetings. So that's, like folks like me that watch it um for no reason, like it's we're probably aware, but not everybody. Um, and around my comment, I just wanted to say that the sorry, I forgot. It was mostly, yeah, the media stuff. It's gonna be important.
Yeah, I'm real unclear about the legality of it too. Like there was some federal law, of course, behind that they leverage for the MCAS, but will districts be legally mandated to do this? In Cambridge, they had already started uh, setting some district-specific process or standards for graduation with it, and they had included a bunch of teachers. So I'm unclear how this is going to be rolled out and
Well,
or enforced.
the framework that's been released is supposedly preliminary, and
Mm.
the final is not due till June. So I don't think anyone's required to do anything at this point. They're still kind of rolling things out in the way that they have, and supposedly now is the time for public comment, for people to react and respond. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Javon?
Yes.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity, just to say what's on your mind if you wanted to, because everybody else has been talking.
If they change the graduation requirements while you're currently in high school, what if you're too far along in high school to like do them, they're gonna have to modify them for you, right?
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, they have to, they should consider like giving enough time um, for students to meet the new requirements, whatever they may be. They can't just sort of put them out there when someone's past the point where they could fulfill them, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be an obvious thing that would be unacceptable. I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't note the time that we started these breakout groups. Did
I
any
think
of
it
you?
was a little bit after 8.
All right, so then we should probably come back. Yeah, let's I'm gonna close out the breakout rooms. That probably gives people a few minute warning so we can come back together, and we still have some more business like our new board members and the treasurer's report. So let me close the rooms. So all participants will be returned to the main session in 60 seconds, it says. So last thoughts while we're still in our small group, anyone?
Not about the breakout, but I was just gonna say that maybe it would be good to announce that if folks, like for example from Mac have to go, that it's okay. I know Diana had put something in the chat, just so
Oh,
they don't feel they have to stay until 8:30.
yeah, actually, Emily has already um,
Good point.
Departed. Yeah. All right. See you on the other side.
It's a
Uh,
Okay, I think we have everybody back. Correct, Lisa?
Yep. Some people had to
Leave.
Yeah.
leave.
So what I would suggest is anybody who is not in Lisa's, or any executive committee member who is not in Lisa's or my group, could you email Lisa and me your ideas? And so rather than discuss now because of the time, the executive board will take everybody's good ideas from the three groups and we'll discuss it as an executive board. And we hope to come out sometime in January with what we feel is our strategy plan for the coming winter and spring. And we'll let everybody know.
Okay.
So Lisa, am I next?
Yeah. We're kind of
Okay.
running low on time.
I'll do this in a minute.
Okay.
As we move on this, and this work will really be we're recruiting for both of our committees. The work here that we've been spent the last bit of time working on, which is trying to thwart the state's recommended graduation requirements and move to a more humanistic model, will really be the work of the testing policy work group. So anybody interested in that committee should email Lisa. And our other working group is called Eliminating Barriers. And right now, our next agenda that we're planning a webinar in the next month or two, which will really focus on ICE engagement or attacks on public schools, and really focused on what are schools experiencing in terms of ICE threats and engagement. Two, how schools are fighting back or pushing back. And three, what can individuals do to support schools in keeping ICE at bay? So anybody interested in working with us around that agenda should email or text me. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Okay, so I just dropped again into the chat a link to our full program for tonight. And if you can open that, and next on our agenda is formally voting for our new board members who have already become interim members. So this is the formal vote of you all, the members of CPS. And on page 4 of the program is a bio and a photo of Soleil Guasp. And then on the next page is a bio and photo of Jilly Santos. And if they want to briefly introduce themselves, Jilly, would you like to say hello briefly?
Hello.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Santos. I'm really honored to have been nominated to be a board member. I have worked with Citizens for Juvenile Justice for the past 3 years, and that's how I met Lisa and first got involved with CPS. And yeah, I have been doing advocacy outside of my work as well. Got involved with the ballot question on eliminating MCAS as the graduation requirement. And starting in January, I'm actually transitioning over to be the movement organizer of the Massachusetts Fight Back table with the Massachusetts Education Justice Alliance. So really happy to be here tonight, really honored to be among you all. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Julie. Now, for Soleil, I believe she is actually airborne at the moment, and I don't know if she'll be able to introduce herself or not.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, a little bit.
A little bit. Right, I'm trying to, oops, lost you. Trying to spotlight. Well, I guess I don't need to spotlight you because I can't see you.
Is it quiet? Is it quiet right now, or
I think we can hear you.
okay? I'll just try to speak super fast right now. But hi everyone, my name is Soleil. I'm currently junior right now at Harvard, and yeah, my
This isn't working.
Yeah, it's not working. Soleil, it's okay. They can read the bio. Soleil, I believe, is actually in a plane on her way to Qatar. And so we give her appreciation for attempting to join from the air. But yeah. So all those in favor of formally inducting Jilly and Soleil onto the CPS Board of Directors, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. And we also need to vote on page 6. There's a ballot for board members. They're all existing board members whose terms are up now, but are interested in serving another 3-year term ending in 2028, and also our president and treasurer secretary, Andrew King. So all those in favor of re-upping the terms of these people, please raise your hand. Okay. Done. Thank you.
Lisa, what do you think about adopting the budget via email and shifting over, given it's 8:23, to Julie? Or do you think we have time to do both?
I think we can adopt it by email.
Okay.
Yeah, in the interest of people's time and respecting your time and ending on time, we're going to do it that way. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie for some final words and to close us out.
Hey. Thanks to everyone for being here tonight to help celebrate some good things that happened this year. A special thanks to our honorees for having the will to continue working to strengthen public education, despite the ugly circumstances of any political work right now. It's difficult to find hope these days to continue the fight. But our honorees and everyone here tonight are making a difference by working to strengthen our public schools. There are so many battles to fight right now, and we're burdened by guilt that we can't take on them all. So many good causes demand our time and our resources. So here's my pitch to you to help CPS with your time and/or your money among so many worthy causes. First, our public schools are crucial to our democracy, as you know. And second, with your help, we can win these battles in Massachusetts to strengthen our public schools. Together, we know we can make a difference. In fact, we already have by repealing MCAS as a graduation requirement and changing the conversation about how our kids should be educated and how they should be assessed. If you haven't made a donation to CPS recently or ever, we hope you will consider making a large or small donation tonight or by the end of the year. Lisa has put the donation link in the chat, right, Lisa?
I'm doing it right
Oh,
now.
she's doing it now. And every donation makes you a member of CPS. So join us now and help us continue our work because we can't do it without you. Happy holidays and good night to everyone.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks to everyone, our new board members, our honorees, our speakers, our treasurer board. Appreciate you all. It was a really inspiring night for me listening to the work of our honorees and just gives me energy for all of the work ahead. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your
Stay
evening.
warm and have a good night, everyone. Bye bye.
Happy holidays,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.